In continuing our discussion about ADA regulations, just wanted to draw your attention that on your textbooks is on chapter 11, starting at page 201, and that is the ADA regulations. So we talked about entry access. Let me give you, for example, a better an example of how this can be. So here is, let's say, a door to the building. This is the lobby area. This is your building. Here is a planter, and you have parking stalls, which cars park here. So this is a planter, etc. And again, you park here, here, and on this side also, typical regular stall, parking stall, is 10 feet wide by 20 feet deep. In city of Los Angeles, that varies and changes depending on the drive aisle. This would be drive aisle. And if you're using a 20 feet stall, your drive aisle 26 feet. And then again, you will have parking. Cars park. Typically, that symbol that I draw in here, like a triangle, indicates a parking or a car in the parking stall. And then you have an entry, let's say, to this site from, this is, let's say, your property line. And this is your public sidewalk. And this is the street. So when you go to any process for obtaining a permit, as part of your plan check, they will ask you to identify the path of travel. This path of travel has to do with a sidewalk, public, and then the ADA stall, parking stall. Now, as I was mentioning in the previous lecture, when you drop off someone or someone is on the sidewalk and he comes in, what you will do is that you create a path. Instead of having a planter, you create a pathway from here, which is identifiable by those striping that I was speaking to you about. So you will stripe this in the blue. And that tells the person who is reviewing it to get your approval is that person can come in here, enter in here. Obviously you need to watch for the two-way traffic, which is fine, and then pass through here, get into this sidewalk area, and then come in and get into the building. Now, if someone was also here on your and here, you need to make sure that this person obviously can easily get into the building. For the parking stall, the regulations for parking stall is that the closest parking stall location to the entrance is or are designated for ADA. That means you will select this to be an ADA stall. This will be selected to be an ADA stall, and so forth. So these are the closest or the last stall next to the entry to minimize physical distance and make it more comfortable for the person on a wheelchair or for that matter with any disability. Now when you look at the path of travel, there are several issues that's going to come into play. The most prominent is, or actually I should say, it's not a single item, but it's rather 2 or 3 items. On any travel, on path of travel, you have to look for a change in level. Which means, do you need to use stair? Do you need to use ramp? What would be your solutions? Like if this building was sitting 5 feet above this level and there was a whole bunch of steps in here, then, in this area, then obviously it would be very difficult for someone that is coming in from, so it has to have a way to climb those steps. And on a wheelchair, it's impossible unless you provide them the means by which this person can go through. So there is a change in level, and then acceptable slope for wheelchair travel. The most acceptable slope, which is for the sidewalks, public, etc., is at minimum 1% and maximum 1.5%. More than that, it would be hard to achieve it. It would be difficult. And you might, at some areas you can see 2%, and it's because it might be a mixture of this. But I would say when you say minimum 1%, you are looking at an exact number of 1/8 of an inch per foot drop. What do we mean by that? That means if you travel 1 foot, you go up 1/8 of an inch, and this is that slope. So this is the slope appropriate for wheelchair. Also, public sidewalks for anyone that needs to walk, this is the regulation, 1/8 of an inch per foot. Now, you might ask question, well, what do people might do in cities that have, or areas that are hillsides? Well, the hillsides condition, it's in a sense addressed either as an existing system for the public sidewalk. For example, city of San Francisco, you have a lot of sloping streets, sloping sidewalks that are far larger than 1 to 1/8. Then in that condition, it's really nothing that you can do. That was built 100 years ago or 200 years ago, and when these rules were not there, therefore basically the conditions have been grandfathered in, as they typically say, when something that is non-compliant and it has been there for a very long time. On the other hand, you need to make sure that new stuff that gets built, you still have this regulation of 1/8 of an inch per foot applied. The other issue is if there is a very sloping street and a sloping sidewalk, then maybe the only way to access the building is through the ADA vehicle. The person who is on the wheelchair or with any disability drives its own vehicle to the designated stall and then from there goes to the building. If you need to provide, for any reason, a ramp, so let's say you have an entry, let's say this is the entry, with the double door, I call it entrance, and you have, let's say, 2 feet. This is about 2 feet above the grade. So this area, if I call this side, the area that is where you drop off, or is the parking or arrival area, if it is at 0 feet 0 inches in height, this area is at plus 2 feet. So, and this is typically identified, the symbol for the height on the plans are this. So this is the height, or difference of surface symbol. So here you have a 0 feet at height, and this is a plus 2 feet. So a wheelchair needs to access this. The slope on the access for the access ramp is 1 to 12. That means if you go 12 feet, you rise 1 feet, and that is the slope. That is the slope of 1 to 12. So if you're going 12 feet and rising 1 feet, here is 2 feet, your total length of ramp is, for 1 foot you needed 12 feet. So for 2 feet you need 24 feet. So you need to create a 24 feet long ramp that comes in. So I would designate you need to have a landing at the top, minimum 5 by 5 landing, and then this would be your ramp, which from here you go up. This is 24 feet, which relates to this. And then you also have to have a designated landing down here, minimum 5 feet by 5 feet. So that way, a wheelchair in the path of travel can come here, go up the ramp, get to the landing area, and then move into the entry of the building. In the next, immediately after the lecture, after this, I will talk about the steps as well.